From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers, home of the best-selling truck 41 years straight, and the 2018 Nissan Titan, backed by America's best limited truck warranty.
We're all rested following a bye week that had absolutely nothing to do with us. Former St. Deuce McAllister, Sean Vazan, I'm Juan Kincaid. Welcome into the Black and Gold Review Show. Are you guys feeling better about this team as they come out of the bye week?
Feel okay about them. I don't know how much has changed since they actually played, except they do get a little downtime. But, I mean, right now, after looking at some games yesterday, and we'll follow up and look at some more, I feel good about this team.
4 straight wins, playing a little bit better in each week. I think I feel pretty good about them right now.
All right, 4-1 to start the second half of the season. I guess after the bye week, it's the second half, right? Let's get you right to the playbook because a lot of things to get to tonight. Play number 1, rested, refocused. But are they ready?
I think they'll be ready. I think they know and understand the position they are in right now. It's about each week getting better, and I think it's important. Here, you're playing an opponent that you hadn't had a lot of success against, and so that's a good way for them to be able to start.
You know, there's always that question that pops up is, did the bye week come at the right time? They've been on a roll. They won 4 straight. Did it halt momentum? You can't control that stuff. You just play the schedule as it comes and come on out and look, you take advantage of the break, and you come back and just attack what's ahead of you. And I just think that's all they can do. And look, they've won 4 straight games, so I think they're in a good spot.
I think what was interesting, Sean Payton talking about when he first got into as a head coach, he had to lean on someone else to help him understand what it takes to win after the bye week. He talked about leaning on Andy Reid as a guy that's been there and done that. Is that unusual? I wouldn't think it is. When you're a young head coach, you got to find someone that you can bounce some ideas off of.
Well, I think, and one thing is you go back and you look at Andy's record coming out of the bye week. I mean, it was phenomenal for a while there, and then obviously he didn't have the players that he had. But I think Sean did the right thing by leaning on him and just trying to get some cues. Okay, what helps you? What changes you as far as helping your guys to be able to recover? What are you doing? What differently can I maybe implement to help my team as well?
And if I recall correctly, 06, 07, and 08 after the bye, they were terrible. I mean, there were 3 terrible games, so obviously he felt the need to tweak something. So I think it's pretty good awareness for a young coach to say, hey, let's try to reevaluate this thing, get back on track. And the record since then speaks for itself.
Because you don't know everything when you're young. They're 7-2 since that 0-3 start. Play number 2, Brees' fountain of youth. He's been so good as he approaches the year 40 in his life. He's been very, very good. Maybe better than we could have expected.
Look, and when I was asked, you know, what's my biggest surprise? And like, nothing Drew Brees does surprise me. I expect him to be excellent. I expect him to be great. But these numbers are unbelievable. This is the highest, you know, passing numbers he's had his entire career. And this is not like it's a product of the new wave of the NFL. Certainly that helps, but it's not. You watch those throws, it's accurate. He seems one step ahead of the game pre-snap and then post-snap. 12 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, almost 78% completion percentage. He's playing his best football of his career at 39 years old.
Deuce, let me hop in for a second to talk about the numbers. We've got him on the board here. A 122.3 passer rating this year. His previous best is 110.6, completing nearly 78% of his passes. He holds the record at 72%. He completed 90% of his throws in last week's game, which is ridiculous. If he continues on the pace he's going now, 5,300 yards, a passing yard will be second best in his career, which is amazing to say the least, and no interceptions. I mean, he's been as perfect as a quarterback can be so far through 5 games.
I don't know if we can correctly or give it the credit that it truly deserves, some of the things that he's doing. I think we have been so spoiled as fans and just people that watch it, and just you expect him to play well. Sean talked about it. I expected him to play well, but I'm going to be honest, I wasn't expecting this. I mean, and it's just been phenomenal to watch. And, you know, people say, well, he's forcing the ball or he's not throwing the ball deep. Wherever he's throwing it to, it's right on the money. And so you understand maybe the throwaways. He understands the pressures. He's seeing the whole field. And it's just been something, you know, it's been outstanding to watch.
And look, whether it's intermediate, whether he goes deep, whether it's executing a screen pass, it just feels like, he and Sean Payton are in they're in tune right now, but he just feels like he's one step ahead of any defense he plays. I mean, let's not forget how good of a defense Washington had going into that game, and he completely dominated them. I mean, they were tapping out by the end of that game. So, like, what he's doing right now is phenomenal, and as I said before, he's playing his best football, the best of his career.
Now let's get to the offseason when fans will start saying, oh, we got to get another quarterback in here, which amazes me every time that happens. Play number 3 on the playbook, going into the gauntlet, their next 5 games are going to be against teams that will likely be in the playoffs at the end of the season. You see it at Baltimore, at Minnesota, home against the Rams, at Cincinnati, who's having a fantastic year, against the Eagles, who lost the Super Bowl last year. I mean, this is the toughest part of their schedule right now. How do they have to finish this 5-game stretch here to still be relevant, leading the NFC South?
Well, for me, I think for them to be able to control what you can control, and that's each week. You know, you want to be able to go 5-3, 6-2 on the road. They have that opportunity. This will be a huge, huge test. You're talking about a team that had 11 sacks this past weekend against the Tennessee Titans, and that being the Baltimore Ravens. So for me, them going out and executing, taking care and controlling what they can control, and then you just chop it down 1 week at a time.
And, you know, Deuce, you and I were talking. It doesn't matter who the Ravens put in there. That defense always seems to have that same philosophy that 9 guys just line up at the line of scrimmage. You don't know where they're going defensively, and obviously it's worked. But I'm looking at the list. Baltimore, Minnesota, L.A., and Cincy. The last time the Saints played all 4 of those teams, they lost each one of those games. This is going to be a very difficult stretch. But for the next 5 games, the record, look, if you're at 3-2 after this next little 5-game stretch, I think you're in a good spot. You'd be what? 7-3 at that point. Yeah. So I think you'd be in a good spot in the NFC South. But like you said, Deuce, you can't really think of it in a 5-game stretch if you're the Saints. You got to go 1 week, handle this week, then next week, handle that week. And that's really how you got to do it.
But you will find out a lot more about this team after this 5 games as opposed to the first 5 of the season. Into the playbook again for play number 4, seeing beyond the NFC South. The Saints seem to be running away with the division right now. They didn't even play a game last weekend, but yet their lead stretched a little bit. That's exactly the way you want the bye week to go, right, Sean?
Absolutely. But I would say it might be a little too early to start kind of booking their, you know, NFC South championship tickets there, because you still got Carolina at 2 games at the end of the season in December. That's always a crazy matchup. You played them 3 times last year and won all 3. That's rare to ever happen. So I think Tampa and Atlanta, you can say you've probably moved ahead of them a little bit, but I would still be concerned about Carolina, even though they lost on Sunday. I wouldn't book the NFC South championship just yet. It might be a little early for that.
I would agree. For me, you want to continue to look at those games, you know, the Atlanta, Carolina, and Tampa. But right now, control what you can control in the NFC. This game this weekend is important just because it's the next one, but really control what you can control in the NFC.
Win the division is obviously priority number 1, but I bet based on the standings, we're going to look at them right now, NFC playoff current standings, if it started tomorrow. Right now you see LA 6-0, Saints in second at 4-1, then the Washington and then Chicago. The consensus has always been, it seems with this team, they have to get home field advantage as far as they can go in the playoffs to be successful in the playoffs. Does that stand pat this year?
I think history is a pretty good indicator, and I think it's, at least with this era, with this regime, you know, if you get those 2 home games or you get home field advantage, that at least get you a spot into the NFC Championship game. I think of that 2011 team. They had to go to San Francisco that second week of the playoffs, the divisional round, or probably a better team, that 49er team, and they ended up losing. Look at what happened last year in Minnesota. The list goes on. So I think that certainly is the clearest path for them, is to get to at least that 2 seed.
I think so as well. If they could lock in either that first or second seed, it's just, hey, look, it's hard to beat this team in the Dome. And so if they can play a number of games there, and then the only thing that you have to worry about is the NFC South, whether it's Philly or whether it's going to Los Angeles, I think that they will be up for that challenge against both of those teams.
All right, play number 5, all eyes on the defense, all eyes on D, because it seems like this football team was a pretty good defense away from kind of making a run, and they've gotten better since week 1 against Tampa Bay. They've gotten a lot better, and it's really shown on the field.
It's not giving up the explosive plays. Yeah. That's what they cannot do. You know, if you want to be one of the even middle of the pack or an elite defense, you cannot give up the explosive plays, and they've limited those plays for the pretty much, you know, since Tampa Bay. Atlanta, obviously, you look at the weapons that they have. Yes, they hit them as well for a couple of those big plays, but you know what we've been impressed with is that front 7, and that is stopping the run. And I understand the safeties and the corners play a part of that, but when they only have to put 7 people in the box and they can stop you from running the football, that's winning football.
Absolutely, and I think given the investments that they've made along the defensive line, to see that sort of come to fruition right now, Cam Jordan's always been steady and consistent, and he's been an explosive player as well. Marcus Davenport played his best game as a pro Monday night. You're starting to see Sheldon Rankins flash a little bit more. Tyler Davison as well, so they got a good depth, a good rotation. Alex Okafor can play both the run and the pass. And I like Demario Davis as a linebacker. You know, you brought him here to improve your run defense. What's their run defense right now?
Yeah.
Number 1 in the NFL. So I think that's really starting to show up a little bit. And I think that has helped the back end with some of the holes they had back there in the early part of the season. So I think they're in a good spot right now defensively.
All right, let's move on now. Coming up, Mark Ingram was running with a little bit of an anger in his return. See what the film shows us about the different ways he was used. And later, we go to the mailbag to debate whether or not the Saints should have kept Kenny Vaccaro instead of signing Kurt Coleman. Stay with us.
You're watching the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the 2018 Nissan Titan.
Welcome back in. It seems like weeks ago that Mark Ingram made his season debut, but it was only a week ago. And Sean Bazan's here to break down his performance, which is really good.
It was pretty good. Mark Ingram is back in business, and it became clear very quickly that the Saints were not concerned with any rust in his return. And according to the film, he proved them right.
28 of Ingram's snaps Monday night came with Drew Brees under center, and 15 of his 16 carries came with Brees under center. And on almost all of them, Ingram worked between the tackles. But his best run was his final one, and actually came when he got to the edge, when the Saints ran a toss left. Ingram followed the path created by Josh Hill's seal block and Teron Armstead pulling around the end to gain 9 yards. There were times where Ingram's presence opened up the play action. It led to 2 significant gains. Second quarter, out of the pony package with both Ingram and Alvin Kamara. Brees fakes it to Ingram, then connects with Michael Thomas on the over route for 31 yards. On this play, Ingram also displayed his ability to be effective in pass pro. After the fake, Ingram hits the defensive tackle who beat the guard. Later in the drive around the goal line, Brees faked the handoff to Ingram again. Watch Washington linebacker Zach Brown. He takes a false step forward, which allows Hill to get behind him for the easy touchdown catch. Ingram also caught 2 screens, and the first one was executed to perfection. Out of their heavy 22 personnel of 2 tight ends, 2 running backs, and a receiver, Brees fakes the handoff. Ingram then patiently waits for the end to clear him. Then he steps out. As Brees turns back to Ingram, there are 3 defenders in the backfield, which gives the Saints a huge numbers advantage. Brees hits him, and Ingram follows his blockers for a 28-yard gain.
Now, statistically, it wasn't a phenomenal game for Ingram, but his all-around ability was on display, and the Saints benefited from his return. So I expect a whole lot more of, as they say, deuce in the locker room. Deuce, number 22.
Well, one of the things that you saw, you highlighted the 22 package as far as 2 backs and 2 tight ends, as well as a single receiver. Anytime that you can get that safety to walk down, that's only going to open up the one-on-one opportunities. And so Mark, his ability to open up the play action and then obviously to be able to drain the clock, he did an outstanding job of being able to slide down on that toss crack play to continue to allow that clock to run. So it was a really, really good game.
I think we were reminded in one game just how important Mark Ingram is to this offense. All right, still to come. Should the Saints consider trading for Patrick Peterson? The former LSU standout is reportedly on the market. We'll answer your questions about that next. And the Ravens were red hot Sunday, sacking Titans quarterback Marcus Mariota a franchise record 11 times in the 21-0 beatdown. We'll look at how the black and gold match up.
Watching the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the 2018 Nissan Titan.
Time now to get to some of our viewer questions. We got a bunch tonight submitted on the Final Play app using that final word feature. This first question comes from Chuck Stowe in Monchatoula. He says, was signing Kurt Coleman a better option than re-signing Kenny Vaccaro? Because Vaccaro was familiar with the defense and could defend the slot. What do you think, guys?
I think right now Coleman is doing exactly what they asked him to. It may not be a perfect look just because you see he's not playing the majority of the defensive plays, but I think for him to be able to bring good things to the locker room, his presence, continuing to help that young secondary develop, I think it was a pretty good signing for him.
Everything I've seen from Coleman when they made this signing, every play he made in Carolina, he made on the back end of the defense, kind of playing that deep half, cover 2 role. And the Saints don't really use him in that role a whole lot. Even when they go cover 2, it's a lot of Von Bell back there as well. So I don't know if it's a situation where he's perhaps doing some things that he wasn't asked to do much earlier in his career and they want him to do here, and he's kind of getting used to it. But Kenny Vaccaro was a completely different style of player, and I think Von Bell has actually filled in admirably where Kenny Vaccaro has left off. I think Von Bell's having a great year right now. So Kurt Coleman, I think he's a little bit just trying to figure it out a little bit right now.
Let's get to your next question. This one comes from Mike M. Morero. Should the Saints go after a trade for Patrick Peterson? Still one of the best cornerbacks in the game, and boy, they would love to have him here. If you're looking at an area on this team that is probably considered the weakness on defense, the uncertainty, it's probably a cornerback.
I'm all for Patrick Peterson.
Yes, sir.
The question is,
Bring him back.
How do you get it done? That's going to be the ultimate question. Fitting his salary under the cap, the Saints can absorb that. I mean, you can massage that salary cap as much as you want to. The question is, what is the compensation going to be? And if the Saints are interested, I can guarantee you there are at least, 30 other teams that are interested as well?
Well, he's a top-tier corner. He's an elite corner, maybe the best corner in the NFL, and he doesn't get thrown at a lot because of that. So this would be another all-in, pushing even the last little bit of our chips to the table here to get this guy in. But I'm with you, Deuce. What are you giving up? To me, given what the Saints, assets-wise, the Saints would have to give up some kind of starter for this to even make it work, plus a draft pick for this to make it. This is a legitimate player who's got 2 or 3 or even 4 great years left in him, and he can return punts as well.
Well, so. He's not even 30.
Right.
I mean, he's a player that's not even 30 yet. So if they can pull it off, then man, Mickey and Sean, you guys, it's whoa.
Yeah.
So the problem is you don't have a first-round pick next year. You don't have a third. You only got a second there. What would it take, do you think, to get a guy like him? And also, if he comes here, how that changes the defense approach from the Saints altogether, doesn't it? I mean, the things you can do with having him on one side, Marshawn on the other side, I mean, it's wide open then.
Well, now you can go and play a single high safety, which they've done so much of, and they still mix it in. But I think that their confidence, they don't really worry now. And you talking about taking things away from a run advantage, they can do that. And so it's like, hey, look, you guys, we're playing man-to-man. You take this guy away, and, we're stopping this team from being able just to be able to do anything.
Our next question comes from Neil Adams in LaRose. Sean, what will the next significant accomplishment by Drew Brees be to add to his legacy?
Well, look, I think the obvious one is Super Bowl ring. I think the next record he's close to is the touchdown record. But I think he wouldn't necessarily have to get that record to secure his legacy. I think the yards record, I think the national conversation really shifted for Brees at that point, because I think a lot of people realized he's been way too under the radar, way too underrated for a long time, and now all of a sudden he's got this record. So I think that shifted the conversation about him a little bit. So records-wise, I think he's good. Get that one more ring, though. Get you one more ring.
When they mention best quarterbacks ever to play the game, they always talk about the multiple Super Bowl winners, don't they? Would that jump him into that upper echelon of quarterbacks?
Well, I think he's already in the upper echelon. I mean, but if you're going to pick at something, I think that's the only thing left that you can pick at. With this next game, knock on wood, he should throw for his 500th touchdown. And that, there's only a couple quarterbacks, Brady, Manning, and I think Brett Favre are the only other guys that have done so. So for him to be able to win a Super Bowl, I think that completes it.
All right, coming up, the Saints are 1-5 all-time against the only team they haven't beaten. Their only win came thanks to a 32 carry, 127-yard, 3-touchdown game by the fella next to me back in 2002. We'll preview this year's matchup next. And be sure to tune in tomorrow night for Fox 8 Overtime, when we'll have more Saints talk as well as look at all the big stories in South Louisiana sports this week. We'll answer your viewer questions as well, so keep submitting those on the Final Play app. And be sure to watch Fox 8 Overtime every Tuesday night at 10:35.
You're watching the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers and the 2018 Nissan Titan.
Up next for the Saints, a trip to Baltimore to face the Ravens. The Saints are 0-3 under Sean Payton and Drew Brees at quarterback against the Ravens. This has always been a difficult matchup, but let's talk first about the last time the Ravens were on the field against Tennessee over the weekend. 11 sacks, tying a franchise record. We know that, Sean, as you said, that defense has always been there for them.
Absolutely, and it doesn't matter who, they just plug and play. I mean, that defense always seems to have the same exact identity, and I don't know if it's something pre-snap, but clearly it's something that Brees has struggled with in the past. So I think the Saints got their work cut out for them this weekend. I really do.
They're going to definitely have their work cut out for them, and I'll go to the offensive side. They will mix Lamar Jackson in as Alex Collins. That offensive line will be another critical one, a key that really sets them up. I mean, I think that it is one of the best also in the NFL. Maybe not in that top 5 like you've seen with Washington and some other teams, but the way that they can protect and give their quarterback time, and then to be able to do some different things zone and power-wise, it's going to be a tough matchup.
Does it begin with the Saints being able to run the ball first against this team?
Well, they have to be able to run the ball, I mean, because you want to limit the looks that they can show you, and then to take away some of the pressured looks that they're able to bring. And the reason they can do some of those things is because teams can't run the ball or are afraid to run it at them.
Don't beat yourself. Don't beat yourself. Don't turn the ball over. No dumb penalties. Give yourself a chance.
All right, it's a late kickoff Sunday in Baltimore, 3:05 p.m. Our tailgate will start an hour beforehand. At 2 o'clock, we'll, of course, still be with you and wrap things up on the final play at 10:30. And we'll have more Saints talk tomorrow on Fox 8 Overtime, and then on Wednesday on Game Plan, both at 10:35. For Deuce McAllister and Sean Bazan, I'm Juan Kincaid. Thanks for watching. Our next newscast is at 4:30 in the morning. Have a great night.
From Fox 8 Sports, this has been the Black and Gold Review Show, sponsored by your Southern Quality Ford dealers, home of the best-selling truck 41 years straight, and the 2018 Nissan Titan, backed by America's best limited truck warranty.